Story, I am always the hoe for canceling Mother's Day celebration that I arranged for my wife after hearing what she told my son. I have a 37-year-old son. I was the widower when I met my now wife. She has a 16-year-old daughter from another relationship. The family is often on pretty good terms. Uh, my son is the quiet one in the house. He keeps to himself a lot, but not to the point of being concerning. Um, my wife and stepdaughter are the complete opposite. They both encourage him to be outgoing and share activities and join gatherings with extended family. The pressure on my son to conform to their extroverted standards has been building steadily. Their constant pushing for him to be more social, more outgoing, more like them wore at his peace until he finally confided in me about feeling overwhelmed. Their attempts to force him into their mold only pushed him further into himself, his quiet nature becoming a fortress against their relentless socialization campaigns. After his confession, I confronted them both. Their apologies seemed genuine, their promises to respect his boundaries appearing sincere. Peace settled over our household as my son finally found space to breathe, to exist comfortably in his natural state, without the constant pressure to perform extroversion. Mother's Day approached, and I planned an elaborate celebration for my wife, wanting to show appreciation for her role in our blended family. My stepdaughter's early warning to her mother about the surprise barely registered as an annoyance, a small price for family harmony. The restaurant reservation was set, her extended family invited, every detail carefully arranged to create a perfect celebration. Fate intervened with an early release from work, leading me to stumble upon a conversation that shattered our family's carefully maintained facade. Standing frozen in my own doorway, I listened as my wife systematically destroyed the bridges we'd built with my son. Her words cut through years of attempted bonding, reducing him to nothing more than an inconvenience at her celebration. My son's desperate attempts to prove himself worthy of inclusion tore at my heart. His promises to behave, to socialize, to make himself smaller and more acceptable echoed through the hallway. But it was her final blow. The cruel reminder that she wasn't his mother, that broke something fundamental in our family dynamic. Their shocked faces upon discovering my presence spoke volumes. The attempted explanations, the backpedaling, the insistence that I'd missed crucial context, all of it fell flat against the reality of what I'd witnessed. The celebration's cancellation felt like the bare minimum response to such a profound betrayal of trust. Her tantrum at the cancellation only emphasized the superficial nature of her concern, focused entirely on her embarrassment rather than the damage done to a child in her care. The mourning brought no resolution, only empty spaces where my wife and stepdaughter had been, their retreat to her parents' house marking a clear battle line in our family conflict. The silence from her phone speaks as loudly as her words did yesterday. Each passing hour without contact reinforces the gravity of the situation, yet does nothing to ease the ache of the betrayal. The quiet of our house now feels heavy with unspoken words and shattered trust. My son moves through our home like a ghost, his natural introversion now weighted with fresh rejection. The celebration could be rescheduled, the reservations remade, the guests reinvited, but the damage to a 13-year-old sense of belonging cannot be so easily repaired. Am I the a-hole or not? Comment 1, not the a-hole. Guarantee they have done this before. Circle the wagons, protect your son. Such disgusting abuse from your wife upon your son. To make it even worse, she is raising her daughter to be cruel and exclusionary. Your son deserves so much better. Comment 2, not the most bad OP. It's highly unlikely. This is the first time either of them has been nasty to him. You are all he has in this world. Please hire a really good shark of a divorce lawyer and divorce this woman ASAP. You need to protect your son and yourself. Get a lawyer now and ask them about having your wife removed from the house. Also, I have had 2 stepmothers in my lifetime, and neither of them ever said anything remotely that shitty. Anyone with remotely decent parental instincts would not say that to a child, even if they themselves were not a parent. Dory, am I the hole for telling a social worker the real reason my sister wants a foster kid? So this is a throwaway account. While my sister doesn't use Reddit, we have mutual friends who do. The toxic pattern began during my 2-year stay in my sister Jane's home. What started as a temporary arrangement between siblings devolved into a nightmare of exploitation. My presence became nothing more than a source of free labor, mandatory child care, and forced income sharing. Each paycheck from my part-time job disappeared into her demands, with threats of homelessness hanging over my head if I refused to comply. The experience left deep scars on our relationship, reducing our interactions to brief encounters at mandatory family gatherings. After my escape, Jane's complaints about lacking help became a constant refrain at family events. My occasional babysitting wasn't enough to satisfy her demands, despite my clear boundaries about not wanting to spend entire days watching my niece and nephew during my precious time off work. Her sense of entitlement to my time and energy never wavered, even after I'd moved out. The true horror emerged during a casual conversation about her latest scheme. Her announcement about wanting to foster a teenager initially seemed positive until she revealed her true motivations. Her words still echo in my mind, each detail more disturbing than the last. Her plan unfolded like a manual for exploitation. Find a teenager age 16 or 17, preferably one who had been in the system long enough to be desperate for any home. Force them to share a room with her son or banish them to the garage, and use them as unpaid labor for housework, cooking, childcare, and her baking business. Her rationalization turned my stomach. The casual way she discussed cycling through foster children once they aged out, her assumption that their gratitude for basic necessities would override any objection to exploitation, her complete dismissal of their humanity in favor of viewing them as convenient, unpaid servants. Every word revealed the depth of her moral bankruptcy. My immediate objections fell on deaf ears. Jane's determination to proceed with her plan forced my hand when the social worker appeared at my door. The decision to reveal her true intentions wasn't made lightly, but the alternative? Staying silent while she potentially exploited vulnerable teenagers was unthinkable. The social worker's gratitude for the information confirmed my worst fears about how common such attempts at exploitation might be. Jane's tearful phone call about her rejected application brought no remorse from me. Her rage at my honesty with the social worker only reinforced the righteousness of my decision. The angry texts and family members defending her position exposed a disturbing view of foster children as something less than human, grateful pets who should happily trade their labor for basic necessities. Their arguments reveal a shocking misunderstanding of foster care's purpose. These children aren't commodities to be exploited for free labor. They're vulnerable young people who need genuine homes, real care, and actual love, not calculating adults seeking to take advantage of their desperate situations. The fact that multiple family members see nothing wrong with using foster care as a source of unpaid domestic labor speaks to a deeper societal problem in how we view children in the system. The rift with my sister seems permanent now, but protecting potential foster children from her scheme feels worth any family fallout. No child deserves to escape one difficult situation only to be deliberately placed in another form of exploitation. Am I the whole or not? Comment one, not the a-hole. Kids aren't slaves and shouldn't be treated as such. I'm glad you got out of living with your sister because she sounds difficult to live with, and you absolutely did the right thing to prevent a child from being treated like you did. Not the whole. What you did was the only ethical option. Not only is this treating another human being like a literal house slave, and a disposable one at that, but older fosters tend to have been through a horrifying amount of abuse that means they often need a lot of help themselves. Honestly, the plan to have him live in the same room as the younger children is generally not allowed for that exact reason. It's incredibly common for sexually abused children to repeat the behavior to other children because they don't know better, and it's been normalized. And I'm guessing the garage plan wasn't even mentioned to the social worker because that is right out. Older foster children are generally harder to place exactly because they generally need so much work, but all your sister sees is free labor. Unless she somehow lucks out with actual Cinderella, her flippant plan is not only cruel, but exposing her own children to potential physical and sexual abuse, drugs, whatever horrible things the foster child had to do to survive. Also, I'd extremely not trust any family member that is on her side. You shouldn't be celebrated by adopting a child for your own gain. This is just a genteel version of Victorian men scooping up orphans and forcing them to work as chimney sweeps and coal miners, then discarding them when they get too big to do the work. Story, am I the Hulk for getting my daughter a hotel room entirely for herself after her stepsisters made her sleep on the floor? My dad passed away 2 weeks ago. Me, my wife, Candace, and my daughter, 16, Shiloh, and her stepsisters, 19 and 17, flew to my hometown to attend the funeral. After that, we got 2 hotel rooms, one for me and Candace, one for the girls. The funeral had been emotionally draining for everyone. As the eldest child, I'd handled most of the arrangements, barely holding it together through the service while trying to support my siblings. By nightfall, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones, and I'd hoped to find some solace in sleep. At 11 p.m., my phone lit up with Shiloh's call. Her voice came through broken and tearful, overlaid with the sharp tones of her stepsisters in the background. The situation became clear. Her stepsisters had decreed that Shiloh would sleep on the floor, despite the room having one large bed with plenty of space for all 3 girls. Making my way to their room, I found Shiloh in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, while her stepsisters stood defiantly by the bed. When pressed for an explanation, they merely shrugged, offering vague statements about being more comfortable this way. Their dismissive attitude struck a nerve. Here we were, dealing with the loss of my father, and they chose this moment to exclude their stepsister. Without hesitation, I told Shiloh to gather her things. The sight of her stepsister's shocked faces as I mentioned booking a separate room spoke volumes about their expectations. They'd assumed their power play would go unchallenged, that Shiloh would simply accept their cruel dismissal. Word traveled fast. By the time I returned to my room, Candace was wide awake and furious. She launched into an argument about wasting money, suggesting Shiloh should have sucked it up for one night on the floor. The absurdity of her statement left me speechless momentarily. Here was my wife defending her daughter's attempt to relegate my grieving child to sleeping on hotel carpet. My response was firm. This wasn't about playing favorites, but about basic decency. Candace had originally arranged the shared room arrangement, hoping to avoid drama and save money. Her intention had been for all 3 girls to share the bed, yet her daughters had other plans. The aftermath of this decision continues to ripple through our blended family. Candace repeatedly brings up the incident, insisting I mishandled the situation. My stepdaughters, whom I've known since they were small children, now maintain a stony silence toward me, despite our long history together, and the fact that Candace is a stay-at-home mom with full access to our shared finances, arrangements we'd carefully discussed and agreed upon long ago. This single incident has created a deep rift. The timing makes everything worse. In the wake of my father's passing, when families should come together, we're instead dealing with this unnecessary drama. The bed was more than large enough for 3 teenagers, making their exclusion of Shiloh seem particularly cruel and calculated. What's most frustrating is how this incident has overshadowed our time of mourning. Instead of processing our grief together, we're caught in this web of perceived favoritism and hurt feelings. The original room arrangement was meant to save money and foster unity, but it instead revealed underlying tensions in our blended family dynamic. Am I the foe or not? Comment. What I'm getting from this is that your stepdaughters were trying to live up to the Disney depiction of stepsisters and were shocked when they couldn't just bully her into getting what they want. What's extra gross is that they did it when coming back from Shiloh's grandparents' funeral. Talk about cruel. You're definitely not the whole. But also, WTF is wrong with Candace if she sees this as playing favorites. Her daughters tried to make yours sleep on the floor for fun. Sounds like the apples don't fall far from the tree. Have you pointed out your daughter is also upset because of the situation and she is playing favorites? Comment 2, not the at. Candace is the one playing favorites. Expecting your daughter to sleep on the floor is some Cinderella type stuff. Maybe pull your daughter aside and find out if this is the only thing they've done to treat her badly.